Welcome to our video, The History Room. Lewis and Clark, the chillest frontier road trip, 1804 to 1806. Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back to the early days of the American frontier, where two very tired men and a small crew decided to paddle, walk, drag, and stumble their way across a continent. So settle in, dim the lights, and let your brains soften a little, because the Lewis and Clark expedition is basically a long, slow, peaceful march of curiosity, mud, journals, and mild regret. This wasn't an adventure filled with explosions or monsters. No dinosaurs, no lost cities, no dramatic betrayals, unless you count someone stealing extra rations. Mostly, it's the story of Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, two calm, practical men with frontier skills and a shared tolerance for discomfort, who were asked by President Thomas Jefferson to explore the newly acquired Louisiana territory. Jefferson loved maps, with a passion most people reserve for hobbies or pets. He genuinely wanted to know what was out west, what rivers went where, who lived there, what animals wandered around, were there plants worth cataloging, and his favorite dream, was there a magical water route that went all the way to the Pacific? Spoiler, no, but he really wanted it to be true. Lewis, who worked as Jefferson's secretary, got the job of leading the expedition. He immediately asked Clark to join him, because if you're going to crawl across North America, you might as well bring someone who won't annoy you on month 3. The expedition begins, May 14, 1804. The Corps of Discovery, a crew of about 40 men, launched from near St. Louis in one large keelboat and 2 small dugout canoes. Their pace was slow, about 10 to 20 miles a day. That meant long, quiet hours pushing and pulling heavy boats up the Missouri River. Life settled into a rhythm. Push the boat, eat, write in journals, sleep, repeat. Lewis described plants, soil, rivers, and animals that European Americans had never formally documented before. Things like prairie dogs, bison herds, and the not-so-friendly grizzly bear. Meanwhile, Clark managed navigation, maps, and keeping everyone from doing anything too foolish. Winter at Fort Mandan. By late November, they built Fort Mandan in present-day North Dakota and prepared for months of snow, cold wind, and repetitive tasks. The fort was a simple triangular structure, warm enough to survive but boring enough to make them wish for spring by the second week. During this period, a young Shoshone woman named Sacagawea joined the expedition with her French-Canadian husband and their newborn son. She carried her baby across mountains, rivers, and plains, a fact that continues to quietly impress anyone who has ever tried to walk through a grocery store with a toddler. Her presence helped the expedition communicate peacefully with many Native American nations along the way, since a woman with a child signaled that the group wasn't hostile. Meetings with Native nations. Throughout the journey, Lewis and Clark met numerous tribes. They held councils, exchanged gifts, shared food, and received crucial guidance. Sometimes the explorers demonstrated scientific gadgets, compasses, magnets, and even Lewis's strange air rifle, which fired silently and always got a reaction. The expedition depended heavily on native knowledge. Without their help, the Corps likely would have run out of food, direction, or morale more than once. The Great Falls Portage, 1805. One of the hardest moments came in present-day Montana, where the Missouri River crashed into a series of waterfalls. The sight was beautiful, but also deeply inconvenient. Boats couldn't pass. So the men carried boats, equipment, and supplies for miles over prickly pear cactus, uneven ground, and summer heat. No dramatic music, just sweat, trudging, and a general "why are we doing this" energy. Shoshone help and the Bitter Root Mountains. In July 1805, the expedition reached a fork in the river. Lewis insisted the South Fork was the main route, while most of the group believed the northern branch looked more river-like. Lewis turned out to be right, which must have been a satisfying moment. Reaching the Shoshone people proved crucial. Sacagawea discovered the chief was her own brother, leading to a surprisingly emotional reunion, and, more importantly for survival, horses and a guide named Old Toby. Crossing the Bitter Root Mountains without that help would have been nearly impossible. Reaching the Pacific, October 16, 1805. After carving canoes from cottonwood trees, the team floated down the Clearwater, Snake, and Columbia rivers until they finally reached the Pacific Ocean. It wasn't a dramatic finish, just waves, gray sky, and the long exhale of a journey halfway done. They built Fort Clatso near today's Astoria. The winter was wet, cold, and relentlessly dreary. Their journals repeatedly complained about the rain, wet clothes, and general sogginess. Imagine a 3-month camping trip where it never stops drizzling. The Long Way Home, 1806. In spring, they began the return trip. Once over the mountains, the group split into smaller teams to explore more territory before meeting again further east. Clark traveled along the Yellowstone River and even carved his name into a sandstone formation now known as Pompey's Pillar, Pompey being his nickname for Sacagawea's baby. After more than 2 years of travel, on September 23, 1806, the exhausted corps drifted back into St. Louis. People celebrated wildly. The explorers brought new maps, descriptions of geography, records of plants and animals, and detailed notes about dozens of indigenous nations. Life after the expedition. Lewis and Clark both received land and double pay. Clark went on to have a steady career and eventually became guardian to Sacagawea's children. Lewis struggled with depression, stress, and financial issues. Despite his brilliance during the journey, he had difficulty adjusting to life afterward. In 1809, he died from gunshot wounds under circumstances that remain unclear, possibly suicide, possibly something else. No one can confirm with certainty. The expedition remains one of the most thorough explorations ever carried out on the continent, not because of dramatic heroism, but because of patience, curiosity, and day after day of calm, steady effort.